All right. Well, Lindsay, thank you so much for hopping on the podcast with me today. I'm super excited to have you here.
Thank you for having me, Renee.
Yeah. So before we dive all in, why don't you just start out giving a little bit, sharing about who you are?
Oh, well,
Big question, I know.
well, it's so funny when you asked me to do this, even just filling out that bio was really hard for me
Yeah.
because I would always in the past just go, I'm a mom and I'm this but for me recently it's been more important to just realize who I am first apart from my roles.
Hmm.
And so that's why I got stuck and didn't fill that out for a while. So yeah, I am a mom, but who I am is Lindsay, and discovering who that is in a different way than I ever have. And and there's roles that I play, but I'm just learning how who I am, not just mom or not just wife or not just fill in the blank. Um,
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
yeah, I'm learning. I'm in a place of discovery and openness and doing the work of myself, and it's been good and it's been hard, and yeah, I'm just on a journey, and along with me are my kids and
Yeah.
my husband and my family and friends.
Beautiful. Yeah. It's always this like beautiful discovery of when we figure out that we are not stuck in a box, right? We're not just a label that is put on us, that there's so much dimension and so many layers and so much to make up who we are. And it's a beautiful journey when we can go on that and discover all of those little pieces of us.
Yeah, I think in the past it just felt selfish, but to just be like, I'm who I am. And it's almost like it had to be, if I'm a mom, like I have to just be in that role all the time. Or, um, but yeah, it feels good to claim myself apart from them as well.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay, so we've already kind of dove in a little bit, and I know you highlighted that you do have 4 kids, correct?
Yes.
Yes. So mom life is busy for you. So take me back to before we started working together a couple months ago. How would you describe where you were at? What were you feeling? What were those thoughts that you were kind of going through your head? I know you've kind of already shared a little bit of that change and that journey of discovering a little bit more of you, but take us back to where you were, you know, 3 or 4 months ago.
Well, I was definitely overwhelmed and definitely chaos, overwhelm, stressed out. All those adjectives were in my vocabulary and in my perspective. Um, yeah, I just felt overrun, exhausted, not enjoying what I have,
Yeah.
not being able to enjoy my children or my husband or myself because of how I was feeling constantly, which was just like being tossed in turned by the waves and never being able to like come up for a breath. That's what it felt like.
Yeah. Well, no, and I remember that was one of those analogies that I remember Joe and I always talking about was this feeling like we were constantly treading water and that we could never fully rise above all of it. Like we were felt like we were just kind of drowning and constantly like kicking our legs and doing the best that we could to just tread water, like to stay
Right.
afloat, you know? And I think that that's somewhere like I totally resonate with that's where I was too.
Yeah, you're like slowly drowning.
Yep.
There's
Yep.
no like floating and resting and so yeah, that's what my experience was. That was my perspective and that's what I was feeling.
Yeah. So what were some of the thoughts you were telling yourself like in that process and in that time? What were you kind of thinking or were you even aware of some of that the voices that you were telling yourself?
Definitely they were negative. I think they've been negative for so long that it's just like this constant recording. That's what I hear. But for sure. Like, why can't you get your act together? Why is this so hard for you? A
Yeah.
lot of things, it's like, why is this so hard for you when it seems fine for everyone else, or seems doable? Or why can't you just do this? Why can't you just do XYZ for more than a couple days? Or but always like, you suck. Like, like at the end of those negative thoughts, is just like, oh my gosh, I suck. Like, I just can't do this. I can't do this. Why can't I do this?
Yeah. Yeah. And so what were some of those motivations? Like what was it that you like kind of you made a decision, you decided you wanted to change, like you were ready to do something different. So what was it that kind of motivated you to do that? Or what was your goal? Like what was your hope and intention in that change?
Um, I've been wanting, I mean, this year has been big in that. And then of course I felt like in the beginning of the year, I made some progress in the first few months, and then it would just like went downhill over the summer. And
Hmm.
so I think then I kind of looked at my goals I had written down for the year kind of midway through, and I realized like I still have a half a year left. Like, that's a lot of time. Like, don't throw everything out. And my tendency is to just throw everything out, and it's all wasted. It's all been in vain, and I have to start all over. And and I realized like, no, I have a lot of time left in this year for, and but shortly after that, so I got like remotivated and really excited. And then shortly after that, things just got hard again, circumstantially. Um, and the perspective didn't help. The continual perspective of that things are just always hard didn't help. But then I think that's when I saw, because I'm on your email list, and that's when I saw your um, email about the beta program. And I just remember thinking initially when I read it, I was like, oh my goodness, this is for me. And I just thought, I have to do this. I have to like send in my video and at least try, because this would be amazing. And I've always just thought I need a group of women to do it with me, that are committed to doing it. Because I'm really grateful. I have some good friends and dear friends that are supportive, but I just really wanted a focused like group about
Hmm.
who's on this kind of same path as me. And so, or at least in my head, I thought that's what I need. Uh, the accountability, the group, the community in that way. Um, so when I saw your email, then I was very excited. And then I didn't get to do my video. And then the last night, I think the deadline, I remembered, and I was like, oh my goodness, I have to do this. And it was perfect timing, because like things were not well. And so I'm like crying in my video too. But yeah, I think if that answers your question, I don't
Yeah.
know.
Yeah, well, and I remember getting each of every single one of everybody that applied, everybody's videos, and I was just so touched by everybody. And I remember watching your video and feeling like I could resonate so much, and it brought tears to my eyes to see and feel exactly where you were at, and that feeling that I felt. I mean, and I think so many moms would feel and like be able to say they feel that way too. That feeling that you described earlier, feeling so overwhelmed and just like, how can I do this anymore? Like, how can I have more joy in my everyday? Like, I just want to be happy and enjoy mom life and my life and be okay with who I am and just all of those feelings. I don't think you're the only one, right? And so watching your video, I do remember. I remember every single one of everybody's videos, and I remember being brought to tears watching your video. So over the course of the time that we were working together and in the group, you said you felt like that group experience was what you really, really needed. So what do you feel like you gained from it? What was that whole process like for you?
Okay, well, overall, it was amazing, and it's neat that it's still continuing, even though I think we kind of all fell off over the holidays.
That's
But
okay.
but I think overall, it's been really good for me as far as my perspective on things. I think for me, the group community has been great. The constant encouragement, the constant uplifting, the constant "let's do this" has been really great, and I can always go with that, and that's been beautiful. It's been really sweet. Uh, so I really appreciate that about the community and the group of ladies, and the understanding. And but I think the biggest thing that for me, if I could sum it up, would be that early on in the program, I had that big realization that I'm doing a lot better than I thought I was. And it was just, I don't know, it was taking this group and taking this focus, and that brought me to this conclusion and this thought. But all of a sudden it was like I could see a little bit clearly, more clearly than I've ever seen. And I was kind of in awe of how far I have come. There's this
Mhm.
quote of this like sign I want to get, but it says, "Today's a good day to recognize how far we've come." And I just love that, because we don't often stop and do that. And for me, I'm just, everything's not good enough. Like, but my kids are like this. My husband's always telling me how amazing our kids are. And I would always be like, okay, I could never really agree, or there was always like a but, or but he would just say that, always like, our kids are so amazing. And it was always like, oh, okay. But it's so silly now, because they really are, and I can see that now. And yes, of course they're not perfect, and yes, they're probably downstairs screaming right now and fighting about the stupidest thing. But for me, like, that was what kept them from being enjoyable. Whereas yeah, that this group has shown me, like, I everything's that doesn't have to be perfect to be enjoyable. And you have been working your butt off all this time, you just haven't seen it, because nothing's been good enough. And so the things that you were implementing each week and all these things, I realized, I'm like, oh, I'm like already doing that. That's awesome. And the tools that you're giving us have been great. But for me, it was more of like an affirmation that, oh, okay, I do have it together a little bit more than I thought I did. and
Yeah.
and I might be doing a good job at that. Like, good job, Lindsay. And so that's really hard for me to say to myself, but that was really relieving, and really opening for me to just maybe realize I've been seeing my world wrong in a lot of
Mhm.
ways. And so I think that's been the biggest thing that your program and the group has given me, the
Yeah.
perspective.
Well, and I know in that we used the Rising Moms Journal throughout the course in the program. And I know that one of the additions that we made to that was that celebrating the wins.
Mhm.
And I think you were a big advocate for that and proponent for that. And I think it's totally true that like 99% of moms probably don't recognize the ways in which they are doing really well, and the ways that we are actually showing up in our lives and for our kids and celebrating that. And so that frame of mind, when we're focused on all of the ways that we're failing and all the ways that we are, like those moments we slip up and those moments when we scream and we yell or we're upset or we're frustrated or whatever, and we focus only on those, that's all we see. And
Mm.
I know for you, throughout this whole time together, like that perspective and mindset shift has been huge for you. Like I just have felt that, and I've seen it from day one. And so would you say that that is your biggest takeaway that you've had, or have there other been things that you feel like have been really great big takeaways for you?
I would say that's definitely the highlight. That's the that's the biggest takeaway, was the whole shift in perspective. But I would say along with that is also having that community, because there was a week in there around Thanksgiving where it got, and I kind of fell off, and I came back on, and I said, oh, I fell off the wagon. Where if I feel like if I had that community and that group wasn't there, I probably would have just lingered in my like self-loathing for a while, and I don't
Yeah.
know if I would have come out. Or again, I would have, again, the perspective would always been like, just throw everything out. The world is ending. And um so it was nice to have that group to come back to, and then just all say like, okay, it's okay, let's go
Yeah.
on, and also for myself to have that commitment to the group to rise above and come back and be real and say, okay, let's keep going. Like, I'm committed to this with you guys, and I'm committed to myself to keep going. So
Yeah.
that was another highlight. And then I think the other biggest highlight would be the whole mindfulness of our talk, of the way we talk to ourselves and our self-talk and our thoughts in the tracks that we play, with your guest speaker, Andrea, right?
Mhm.
Um, that was really good, because I feel like we kind of all started to actually think about some actual tracks that we play in our heads. And for me, that was really great. I had heard about that years ago, but I never actually did. I had it written in my journal, this part of my journal, for a long time, 4 years ago, about like new tracks that play in my head. I just had never filled it out. So when Andrea brought that all up again, I was like, no, this is totally on path and on cue for me to do. And so I taking the time to actually think the thought. Well, those, I mean, I didn't really have to think very hard about what those negative thoughts are. You just have to sit there and wait for them, right? But then to consciously make a new thought was really neat. And to see, and then to write that down, and then to see how that made such a shift in my daily thought patterns. I was surprised, I guess, to see how such a simple tool can make a big shift.
Mhm.
And so now the practice is to continue recognizing those thoughts, making the new track, and then continuing
Yeah.
to
Well,
go.
and I think that that's something that so many times when we're looking at things, we look at like these new habits and we're like, "Oh, a gratitude practice, a morning routine, oh, shifting the way we think." They seem so simple that we oftentimes don't do them. We don't make them a priority, we don't focus on them, that we don't give them attention. We just think like, "How could that really be that big? Like how could that really make that big of a difference?" So for you, like you've really, and like I said, you've taken this like mindset piece of it and really run with it. So how would you say that has changed, like in that day to day? Like where are you at right now? How are you feeling on the day to day right now?
I feel like so it's a practice, right?
Yeah.
So and it's a habit that I needs to be cultivated more and more, and the more I do it, the better it is.
And the easier it gets.
Right,
Yeah.
exactly. And so now that I have, it's more just taking that time to sit down and kind of go through the day and think about what were those thoughts. But it just, I feel like I'm excited to continue to work on the tracks for sure. And especially the ones that come up all the time. But like, I'm excited to see how that is going to play out overall, because like I said, I think a lot of this for me has just been a complete mind shift. My
Hmm.
circumstances haven't really changed. It's really just that my perspective and my mindset has changed. And you hear that all the time. You hear all the different things and sayings, but I think part of me also was scared to believe that that could just be that simple and that true. Like, no way my life can change like that simply.
Yeah.
But to, again, be in this committed group and to be open to it, and then seem like, yeah, it really does make all the difference. Not just like some of the difference. Your perspective, your attitude, your mindset makes all the difference,
Yeah.
and you get how then you hear stories of people who go through terrible things, but they make it through, or they, triumph because pretty much their mindset. And so now I'm like, oh, duh, a duh, of course. And then I'm like, oh, wow, I just spent so many years of my life just like beating myself up. And so it's been a neat year. To One of my things for this year was like learning how to love myself. And even to say that now feels like totally easy to say, like, oh yeah, to learn to love myself. But at the beginning of the year, beginning of last year actually, um to say that felt really silly and like ridiculous and pretty impossible. Like it felt really
Mhm.
uncomfortable to even say that. And now, um, yeah, I feel like I can say that I do love myself, and I'm learning to how to do that more and more, and how to what that looks like. And like again, the group was such a beautiful thing in the program because it kind of rounded out the year. You know, it was a nice ending, and I feel like it kind of took everything that I was figuring out and the little puzzle pieces I had throughout the year and the work that I had done and then the failure. It kind of just took everything and it kind of, I don't know, made a nice collage of it.
Yeah, well, and I think you like just highlighting what you said is I often say that there can be clutter and chaos and busy and craziness all going on all around you, but that doesn't mean that's how you have to be. And I think that that's what you are just saying. Like you are saying like none of the circumstances around you, your life, your relationships, your kids, your house, your work, like everything in your life essentially stayed the same, but you internally are completely different. Like you're a completely different person. And like you said, it's still a journey, it's still a habit that you're going to keep going and you're going to continue to evolve and change and grow, but that process like has completely changed where you're at.
Yeah. And it
Yeah.
started and like, and I can see that there's some momentum now finally that I feel like, yeah. And I've been like sharing with my friends and my family, and I think I shared with the group and you, like, I feel like I've turned a corner. And again, it's not really my circumstances are different. It's just what's happening inside. And that's huge because
Yeah.
it's going to make things so much better for me, but also my experience, but also my family and my marriage and, you know, XYZ. And so, yeah, it's been really good. And to to kind of have that catalyst and that momentum now, I feel like it's just going to keep snowballing.
Mhm.
There's just like this big positive change, you know, like positivity. You know, there's this one thing I seen. I don't know if you've heard of the mom of 10, but she's this lady I happened to randomly see on Instagram one day a long time ago. But one thing that really stuck with me that she said was just she doesn't try to be positive. She makes it the only way she can function, and
Mhm.
that really like totally, I can see that. Of course, things can be negative. Of course, like there's always going to be that contrast, but just even that attitude, you know, of no, that's the only way we can function. Because I have been spending the last how many years of my life beating myself up. Has that worked? Absolutely not. So why
Yeah.
not try the opposite way? You know?
Yeah, yeah, and that's how I was. I said like, "Okay, what I'm doing is not working,
Yeah,
so I've gotta try something different," you know?
yeah. So
So where do you see yourself a year from now?
uh, I it's funny. I think thriving, and even I there's a little bit of hesitation to even say that word, but yeah, thriving. I think I've also learned in this group to just be like positive and like say it, you know, not be so scared to say it. I
Mhm.
think one of the coolest things when we did our first call, you said like we closed our eyes, you know, and but then you said imagine the feeling that we're going to feel at the end of this, and not that it's not if it's going to happen or what if this doesn't work, but imagine that it is happened and it has happened.
Mhm.
And that was really good for me or powerful for me because of course I think maybe I don't know, I can't speak for the rest of the group, but I was definitely like, well, what if this doesn't change things, and what if, you know, so that was just neat to start right off the bat, like, nope, there's going to be change.
Yeah. Yeah.
And even like when you had us at the end think about walking into 2021, that was cool too, because that's like a whole year from now. And I just, when I imagine that, I really think, wow, I think it's going to be a thriving atmosphere internally and externally. And that's really exciting. Like I get
Yeah.
excited and I can smile about that, and it feels within grasp. And partly is already in grasp, because it's almost like I'm just going to claim it. Like, it's going to be awesome. It's going to be
Mhm.
a great year, and it's going to be a great decade. And I completely forgot about the whole decade thing. My friend reminded me, and I was like, oh my gosh, totally. Like, the last decade was like birthing babies and feeding them and like all these things. And this next decade is going to be like just totally different and awesome and positive. And
New opportunity.
yeah, I'm learning
Yeah.
how to love myself more and teach my kids that. And what a gift to be able to teach them that, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. So if you were to go back to that person, you said when you got the email, whatever, what advice would you give to yourself back then? Like, what would you say to that person?
Back in like October when I got the email
Yeah.
about the program,
Yeah.
um,
Or even before that, I guess, like not even when you got the email, but like if you were to go back to who you were, 4 or 5 months ago, what advice would you give that person?
geez, I would just say you need to take a step back, like many steps back, maybe, and look what you have done, and stop thinking like, let's just make a list of all the things you have done well,
Mhm.
and let's make a list of all the things that you are doing for yourself and for your emotions and your physical body and spiritually. And then also, like, let's look at those things, and let's see how you have been doing like a good job, I would say. And that also, you're gonna be okay, Lindsay. Like, you're gonna be okay. And not only okay, you're gonna be doing awesome. And it is possible. Like, it's
Mhm.
possible to overcome. And like, and also, I would say just like good job for sticking with it, even though you feel like you're never getting anywhere, even though you might feel like you're making like 1 millimeter of a step. Like, good job for sticking with it, because
Yeah.
that's all that you need to do. Is just like, that's what life is, like getting up and trying again and getting up and trying again and getting up and trying again. And it just makes it awesome and easier when you have a group of people around you that are also saying that and doing it with you.
Yeah. I love it. Thank you so much, Lindsay.
Yeah.
Is there any other last little thoughts or words that you want to share before we go?
No, I think I just wanted to say thank you so much, because that was a lot of time and love and effort and energy and heart that went into that. And I know you're still, it's your baby. And so I know we're all just so appreciative of the opportunity to come together like that and learn from you. And also just appreciate your authenticity as well through the whole thing. It's been really
Thanks. Yeah, even like today showing up sick.
good. Yeah.
It's
All
it happens, like there's going to be days when we're not our best self and that's okay.
totally.
All
So
right.
yeah.
Well, thank you. I appreciate so much. And I appreciated the vulnerability and authenticity of each and every single person in the group. And I think that that is one of the most beautiful things in our society is that and I know I've talked about it, but the fact that we're so connected via social media, but yet at the same time feeling so disconnected, and that real authenticity and vulnerability can sometimes be really hard. And so
Yeah.
I appreciated all of the willingness to grow and the willingness to say like I need to make a change and I'm going to be willing to do it and go after it. So I appreciate all that.
Yeah, I think that would be the one thing I say then to everyone, is like, to anyone who's listening, is like, you are not alone, because I have felt that so deeply and darkly.
Mhm.
And it's true. You are just not alone. And just know that there are people who are feeling exactly what you're feeling.
Yeah.
And you can come out of that too.
Yeah. Yeah, you're never stuck in one spot no matter what the life circumstances looks like.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for hopping on, Lindsay. I've appreciated having you.
Thank you.